What does it take to outsmart cancer? Research.
It's been revolutionary to have women-led research teams.
I lead a team of 10 researchers. We identified a key gene that's mutated in blood cancers.
My mentor, Dr. Janet Rowley, proved the genetic basis of cancer. I built on her research and made new discoveries that led to new treatments that helped put patients into remission.
In the last 20 years, we have made significant progress. There are now 5 drugs that we can use to target breast cancer, and some of these drugs also are involved in ovarian and prostate cancer.
Diversity exists within cancer. And so why not have the same type of diversity and inclusion in scientists?
We're looking at the specific types of cancer that shows up in women of African descent.
I'm investigating why certain chemotherapies aren't working to treat triple-negative breast cancer.
This is a really exciting time to be involved in cancer research because there have been a lot of breakthroughs.
The pace of cancer discovery is more rapid than ever before. And it's an irony that at this time, there is limited government funding for cancer research.
A number of my peers have had to close their laboratories because they were unable to obtain NIH funding.
And young women researchers are at a disadvantage. Women are awarded smaller first-time NIH research grants than men, $41,000 less annually.
The American Cancer Society has created a new initiative to fund women-led research.
Because we need to keep these young women investigators engaged and supported. At a critical time in my career, the American Cancer Society gave me funding.
They've funded me at 2 key points in my career. The first time was as a junior investigator, and the ACS enabled me to launch my laboratory.
The ResearchHERS initiative will allow us to fund the many women who have the kind of energy, excitement, and intellect to finding treatments and cures for cancer.
I'm hoping to find a cure for leukemia.
I'm hoping to use genetics to help patients live longer and better lives.
There's always a question to ask, and having a grant allows me to continue to ask those questions.
The American Cancer Society ResearchHERS initiative is a unique opportunity to invest in promising young women investigators.
Because that's the next generation that we're all here to support.
We've been given the gift of time. And so we want to ensure that we're investing not just our time, but our talent and, yes, our money in finding ways to find cures and hope.
Together, we'll find a cure.
Hello, and welcome to the launch of the 2022 Los Angeles ResearchHERS Women Fighting Cancer campaign. My name is Kelsey Davis, and I am the American Cancer Society staff lead for the Los Angeles ResearchHERS campaign. We had a very successful 2021 campaign with a virtual speaker series, and we're excited you are joining us today for the launch of the 2022 campaign. ResearchHERS is a movement that raises awareness and funds to support women-led cancer research. Today, we will hear from a group of female researchers who will share about their work and the importance of women leadership in cancer research. To kick off our program today, it is my pleasure to introduce you all to our virtual MC, award-winning journalist, Carolyn Johnson. Carolyn is the co-anchor of the NBC4 News at 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. Carolyn is known for her reporting on health and science and has worked both in front and behind the camera, reporting and producing numerous programs and specials with more than 20 years of journalism and production experience. We are so thrilled to have Carolyn joining us today.
Kelsey, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be back here for this very important program raising awareness and funds for women-led cancer research. As Kelsey mentioned, I had the chance to participate in one of these events before, and it's just so inspiring to hear these researchers, doctors talk about what they're doing, and it makes such a difference. I myself have had breast cancer. Interestingly, after my diagnosis, I think it was about 3 years after my diagnosis, my mom was also diagnosed with breast cancer. And just a couple months ago, she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So unfortunately, cancer has played a big role in my life, but I can tell you I am so grateful to the progress that has been made thanks to researchers like those you're going to hear from today. I mean, I benefited from early diagnosis. I benefited from drug therapies, as did my mom. And I always like to say I had cancer light, but it is cancer. And anyway, I'm very thrilled to be listening today along with all of you. So these women truly are making valuable contributions to cancer. I was shocked to hear how consistently underrepresented they are in research leadership, and especially when it comes to funding. But the ResearchHERS campaign is really designed to change that. And together we can sustain women-led cancer research, bolster the careers of women researchers, and certainly inspire a new generation of female leaders for future cancer research. So thank you all for joining today and for being part of this very important movement. Of course, first, a big thank you to Cedar Sinai as the presenting sponsor here of this year's ResearchHERS campaign. By the way, I love that title that American Cancer Society came up with. It's so perfect. Also, thanks to Cedars for their dedication supporting women in research. This is the month of May. You might know it's National Women's Health Month. It's also National Cancer Research Month. So today's launch event, certainly a celebration of both of these important topics, as well as a call to action to continue to support women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And a second virtual speaker series is already in the works for September. You'll be hearing more about that later. These events, they're an opportunity to hear from women leading cutting-edge cancer research right in our own backyard at institutions throughout LA County. Today, we have the privilege of highlighting 3 women cancer researchers from Cedar Sinai and 1 American Cancer Society funded researcher from UCLA. So to start us off today, I'm pleased to introduce our 2022 Los Angeles ResearchHERS campaign chair, Dr. Lali Medina Kouay. Dr. Medina Kouay was one of our speakers last year. She has graciously volunteered her time and efforts to serve as the 2022 ResearchHERS campaign chair. Dr. Medina Kouay is professor of biomedical sciences and a program leader of the cancer biology program at Cedar Sinai. And she's with us to share her research, her involvement with ResearchHERS, and why this is a priority for Cedar Sinai. So please welcome Dr. Medina Kouay.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. So nice to see you and to see everybody here. And I'm grateful to get a chance to talk a little bit about my research, ResearchHERS, and Cedar's priorities in this important campaign. I've been developing a biologically based biodegradable nanocarrier for targeting tumors. Sometimes we call these molecular missiles that can encapsulate therapeutic cargo and target tumors, just like little missiles, except for instead of being like tumor-seeking missiles. And the point is to deliver cargo that can help reduce tumor growth without harming normal tissue, which is why we call them missiles. So I've designed these to mimic normal proteins found in the body in order to improve their tumor specificity and also their safety. Ultimately, as you can guess, these are being developed so that we can eventually use in the clinic. And one of the most important breakthrough findings that we've come across in the past few years is that these nano-sized biological particles that we've developed can cross an important barrier to therapy, and that is the blood-brain barrier. Mm-hmm. We've been able to show that our particles can target tumors that are in the brain, and we've currently been testing these in targeting brain metastatic breast tumors, especially triple-negative breast tumors, which currently don't have any targeted therapeutics being used currently in the clinic. And once these tumors and any tumor really that metastasizes to the brain, whether or not they're treatable outside of the brain, once they reach that site, they become more difficult to try to reach, much less target, and usually much more aggressive therapies are needed for those tumors. So we hope that with the development of these particles, we will be able to use these to treat patients that have advanced disease, especially those that have metastasized to the brain. I'm really grateful to be involved in the ResearchHERS campaign. The American Cancer Society has actually been instrumental in helping me get my research off the ground. I received funding when I started my career as an independent investigator. It was about 20 years ago, practically to the day, that I both had just the worst news in my life and something that really turned things around for me. My family and I had suffered a great and unexpected loss of a family member. And it was around the time when I was starting my independent research career. And at that point, I almost felt like I might have wanted to perhaps step away from research. But it was also at that time that I got the good news that I received American Cancer Society funding. And it reminded me that there was a purpose and a mission to fulfill. And so this part of research has really been practically a vocation for me. And I would bet probably my colleagues could say the same thing. So the funding has led to full lab funding from the National Cancer Institute and other resources, expansion of my technology development, acquiring a wonderful position at Cedar Sinai, collaborating with medical doctors treating patients, and recruiting and training the next generation of researchers. So it was a real honor to be a panelist last year, and I am further greatly honored to serve as this year's ResearchHERS campaign chair. Finally, the priority for Cedar Sinai is simple. If you look at the mission statement of Cedar's, it's all about the patient. And even for us basic researchers at Cedar Sinai, we really have as our ultimate goal being able to translate and develop our research in a way that can ultimately benefit and improve healthcare for the patient. And as you know, the patient could easily be any of us someday. And so in addition to that priority, I would lastly like to say that an increasing priority at Cedar Sinai is highlighting the diversity of disciplines, specialties, and voices that contribute to that first mission in improving the health and welfare of the patient. And I think that you will see that articulated very well by my colleagues and panelists today. So thank you so much.
Dr. Medina Quay, thank you for sharing all of that with us. So exciting to hear, and exciting to hear that that research translates as quickly as possible to the patients who need it most. You spoke about the panelists. Let's introduce them now. Dr. Ekaterina Koltsova, she's Associate Professor, Department of Medicine at Cedar Sinai. Dr. Ghislaine Martins is Associate Professor, Biomedical Sciences and Medicine, also at Cedar Sinai. And Dr. Jennifer Murphy, Associate Professor, Molecular and Medical Pharmacology at UCLA, and she is an American Cancer Society funded researcher. You can find their full bios. They're located on the Los Angeles ResearchHERS website, as well as in the chat. Kelsey is going to add that link to the chat for you right now if you want to read a little bit more. So I'll start things out with asking some questions of our panelists, but certainly if you have any questions in the audience, make sure to add them to the chat. Kelsey's going to be monitoring that. She'll be sharing some of those with me, and we'll be sure to incorporate as many of your questions as we can during the course of this conversation. But let's begin with our panel discussion now. And each researcher, I'd like you to give us an overview about your specific research. And let's begin with Dr. Koltsova.
Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to me participate in this exciting event. And so my research is focused on understanding the role of immune system function. And as you know, the immune system helps us to fight infection. However, when it's misfunction, it can promote chronic disease development, but also cancer development. So my lab is trying to understand how this abnormal activation of immune cells can be regulated during cardiovascular disease development and also in cancer. And these two types of diseases are major killers in the modern world. Specifically, we are interested to understand how cytokines, which are small soluble mediators of inflammation, control various immune cells in these diseases. Our work in liver cancer, and this disease is on the rise right now because of the diets and environment toxins, allow us to discover novel mechanisms which regulate killing potential of so-called innate lymphoid cells. Developing agents which could target this mechanism will hopefully allow us to arm these immune cells to attack cancer cells. And this will help both to prevent cancer development in the patients with a high risk of liver diseases, but also treat developed tumors. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, we'll be diving into that a bit more, but right now I'd like Dr. Martins to also give us a summary of your research.
Thank you, Caroline, and it's really a pleasure, excuse me, to be here today and have this opportunity to participate in this really exciting event, as Katya mentioned. So much like Katya, I also, or Dr. Koltsova, she's a colleague, so yeah, I tend to call her by her first name. Much like she mentioned, I too study the immune response. I am an immunologist, and work in my laboratory focused primarily on understanding how the immune response works and sometimes why it doesn't. We're particularly interested in understanding how the molecules inside the cells tell the cells to behave one way or another during an immune response. And that ultimately defines if that immune response against cancer or any other illness will be successful and well controlled, or if it would be harmful. So one of the questions we're currently asking is how some immune cells can live inside tumors and not really fight the tumor. And we're trying to find out what molecular pathways define that. In my lab, we use a series of in vivo models. We work with experimental animals and also tissues that we obtain from patient donations. Cancer is one of the models of disease that we study. And our ultimate goal is to identify molecules in these pathways inside the cells that can be manipulated for potential new therapeutic developments. And one of the studies we did in my lab a few years ago, for instance, showed that a soluble factor produced by immune cells actually could be used by tumor cells for their own growth. So that's the type of pathways we're trying to uncover that we believe can foster development of new therapies, not just against cancer, but also other disease. Thank you.
Certainly seems like there can be crossover there.
Yes.
And Dr. Murphy, can you please share some more about your research for us?
Sure, Carolyn. So thank you to the ACS for allowing me to share my research. And it's great to be here amongst the other panelists. So my research focuses on a molecular imaging technology called Positron Emission Tomography, or PET, PET for short. And PET, it's a highly sensitive, non-invasive technology that it allows one to image specific molecular targets that are associated with cancer. So in essence, you can think of the technology as basically a camera that can take pictures of the biochemistry of cells and tissues within the body. So similar to how X-ray technology takes pictures of bone structure, PET technology takes pictures of biochemical processes, and it's mainly used as a diagnostic tool for cancer detection. It can also be used for patient stratification, which would be identifying appropriate patients that may benefit from a specific type of therapy. And it can also be used to monitor therapeutic response or the lack of response, which is very important to help physicians make key decisions when treating cancer patients. So PET is a valuable imaging tool that is emerging as an essential part of cancer research and clinical care, particularly by helping to provide information to better understand cancer biology and its therapeutic modulation. The way that PET works, just to get a little bit into the details, is that a molecule is designed to exclusively bind to a cancer target of interest. And this molecule is tagged with a particular type of radioactivity. The radioactivity on the molecule is attached, and then that is injected into the patient. And this entity finds the cancer target, binds to it, and then emits those radioactive signals. And we can detect those signals from a scanner when a patient is scanned. And the information that we get from that can be very valuable about knowledge that we can learn about those actual cancer cells. So for instance, we can, it'll provide information such as tumor localization. So where are the tumors in the body? It can provide information on, is there potential metastasis? Are these tumor cells migrating to other parts of the body? These are very important things that a PET image can help tell a physician. And my contribution in the field, specifically as an organic chemist, is to help design and develop chemical methods to produce these radioactive molecules, which are called tracers. So overall, the aim in my research program here at UCLA is to simplify and facilitate access to these types of imaging tracers so that others can help, it can help others examine cancer biology and hopefully enhance cancer detection.
When you talk about simplifying access, explain to me how that works, because what you're doing does sound very interesting, and this is different from how it's currently done.
Yes, it's a real challenge to make these molecules where the radioactivity stays attached to the molecule without being displaced. And that's really important so that we get an important image and valid information. And so my group, to make these molecules available broadly to everybody around the world that wants to do this technology, we're trying to come up with chemistry to help facilitate that construction of those molecules so that they're stable, they're easy to do. We want to make it so it's like a kit. So you basically buy a kit and any chemist could put together these molecules. And that would make it more available to everybody around the world and more accessible so that these kind of imaging tools can be used. Right now, the chemistry is a little bit challenging. And so not everywhere can people make these molecules.
Interesting. Okay. And Dr. Koltsova, tell us a little bit more about your journey into cancer research and where you are today. I imagine there were some very important mentors along the way who helped you in this journey.
Sure. I was always fascinated by how immune system work in the context of different diseases. And through the whole course of my education, starting from undergraduate work, I was working to study how immune system could function in a normal context, in the context of the disease development. And so several years ago, I became very much interested to investigate the role of immune and inflammatory mechanisms and regulation of cardiovascular disease development and metabolism. And so this is something which was a largely understudied area like about 15 years ago, and nobody can even imagine that cardiovascular diseases could be driven by immune system. So in terms of the going into the cancer research, so several years ago, we decided to expand our observations which we made in cardiovascular research and study liver, which is very important organ which regulate fat in the body and fat metabolism in the body. And so we started to explore how molecules which we identified are implicated in the regulation of cardiovascular disease development could regulate normal and disease liver function, and particularly liver cancer. And so this brought us to the discovery of novel, previously uncovered mechanism which regulate immune response in cancer. And I'm very proud to say that this work led to the development of treatment for the patient, and the company which we closely collaborate developed the reagent which will be tested in a phase 2 clinical trial for liver cancer patients. And this is very exciting for me to see how this develops.
That is exciting. I mean, and as we talked about earlier, it's so exciting to see this research that you're working on, make it to that next step as quickly as possible. Is there an increase in liver cancer now? I mean, with the connection to diet and such?
Yes, I think previously liver cancer was mostly associated with the hepatitis B and particularly hepatitis C infections, but with the development of vaccines, this cause of liver cancer was significantly reduced. However, because of the fatty diets and what's called in the research Western diet, so this combination of diet plus availability of different environment toxins and different preservatives which people use in the food, the liver cancer is on the rise. And unfortunately, because of the obesity epidemics, and especially in children in the United States, this will be an ongoing problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Dr. Martins, you also come to this from an immunology perspective. Is there one advancement in your research that's particularly exciting to you?
In my research in general, I think the main discovery that I think was really exciting was the one I mentioned already. We found that this inflammatory factor produced by immune cells was actually promoting the growth of tumor cells. And in models, in experimental animals, if we blocked that particular inflammatory factor, we could actually block tumor growth. And this was also, discovered by other investigators at the same time. And I think it's moving forward to clinical trials, although we're not directly involved with that in my laboratory. But overall, I think studies in immunology have, I think, generated a very interesting and one that I'm really excited about advancing in cancer therapy, which is the use of the immune system, manipulation of the immune system to treat cancer, which is what we call immunotherapies. I am particularly excited about that. It's not our specific area of research, but I've never seen so many advance in such a short amount of time. I mean, these therapies, they raised from basic immunology studies, trying to understand how the immune system control itself. And then an immunologist was, thinking that maybe if you could block those particular breaks of the immune response during cancer immune response, you would enhance that response and help fight the tumor. And that has been working. It's not perfect. It needs, there's room for improvement, but it has been working, I think, in many cancers that other therapies have failed in the past. So I think as an immunologist, this is really exciting to see, to watch. It's a terrific time for immunology to help cancer treatment. And I'm really excited to watch that.
Yeah, that is exciting. And Dr. Murphy, you are an American Cancer Society funded researcher. Tell us what that means to you and how it impacted your work.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think, it's been a huge honor to be funded by the ACS and be part of its remarkable community. And I can remember the day that I found out that I got the funding. So, it wasn't, as a young investigator starting a research lab, there are a lot of challenges that we face, from hiring researchers to ordering equipment to set up a lab from scratch, to writing grant proposals and hopefully getting funding. And the list goes on. And it can be a bit overwhelming as you start as an early investigator, just juggling everything and wearing all the hats. But when you get that first substantial grant, it's a huge victory. And for me, the first big grant that I got was the ACS Research Scholar Grant. So it was a turning point for my lab. I think a tremendously happy moment that I can distinctly remember. And I had just come actually back from a medical leave after going through my own cancer journey. And so I was trying to get back on track with my career goals. And the ACS award was like a breath of fresh air. It really gave me the motivation to hit the ground running, to ramp up my research program. And I think most importantly, just the feeling of being an ACS awardee was confirmation to me that I belonged to a community of fighters, really, both in my personal life as a survivor, but also in my professional life as a cancer researcher. So again, it was a huge honor to get that award and to be part of the ACS, an ACS researcher.
Yeah, and it certainly sounds as though it came at just the perfect time in your life as well, and took you on to the next stages of everything.
Yes, absolutely. The timing could not have been better. And I think it was really the boost I needed to really, get my fighting gloves on and go forward. So.
Terrific. Well, we have a question in from the chat. And in this one, I think both Dr. Koltsova and Dr. Martins can speak to. What are your thoughts on chronic inflammation mediated by obesity and differences seen with immunity? That is, does obesity make immunity worse in active cancer patients?
Yes, I agree with the statement. I think it's definitely a huge problem. And so this is what connects also this type of aberrant immune response in cancer and cardiovascular diseases, and obesity and fatty liver disease would be driving both of these devastating types of the pathologies.
Yeah, it's certainly something that I think people don't necessarily make the connection with, but Dr. Martins, I expect you have something to add here as well.
I think Katja put it very well. Every time that there is unnecessary inflammation in an organism, what is the case with obesity, right? That didn't have to be there. It's just happening because the diet caused that. It's not there to fight an infection. Then there's certainly an opportunity, we believe, for cancer to grow. So there's certainly a connection there. This inflammatory factor that I keep mentioning, it's a cytokine, and that is induced when there is inflammation, obesity-induced inflammation. So you can imagine that there are many other factors like that that's produced during an immune response to doing an inflammatory response, such as the one has during obesity, that could promote growth of cancers that otherwise probably wouldn't grow. So there's definitely a connection there. It's an important point. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Well, we've talked about how women tend to be funded less than men when it comes to their research, and there are fewer women-led research teams. But I wanted to ask each of you, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing women in research today? And Dr. Murphy, let's start with you.
I think that's a really good question. I think, part of it is that women, we need to have confidence. We need to have confidence that we can have a successful career in scientific research, and particularly in cancer research. We need to be resilient and keep trying to, compete with others in the field. And so I think, there are additional challenges that we face that maybe our friends and colleagues that are men that don't face. But I think, I also think that it's an exciting time to be a female researcher in this field. And I think that, the best is yet to come as in terms of possibilities that we can achieve.
Yeah, Dr. Martins.
I believe that there are many, many challenges that researchers in general face, and then females have specific challenges. I think the main challenge, and this is interesting because if you read studies that look at challenges that, reported by women in different countries doing research in different areas, they all see this sort of rates very high in the list, and that's the challenge of finding good balance, work and life balance. And I believe that's not because women are not as good as men as finding that balance, but it's because women usually accumulate more functions and more, in many, many cases, it's not all the time, but in many, many cases, women are the primary caretaker for the family, be it for children, be it for, aging parents or relatives. And it's hard to balance that with, the demands of life in science. So I think that's certainly an important challenge, probably the most important one as I see it, and one that's common to many, many women, in different parts of the world doing different, research in different areas, and one that I think can be addressed. And I think it's really refreshing to see that institutions are now paying more attention to this, and you have many cases where there are, childcare available at institutions. There are places that have or have at least started to support that, even if it's not at the institution. And I think it's super important that we talk about these challenges here, because we can, try to find coping mechanisms, right? And the coping mechanism cannot always be work harder, focus more. There's actually specific things that need to be happening to help women face this challenge.
You mentioned childcare. Do you have other specifics that you think could be helpful? And is it also sometimes about being sure to ask for the help or voicing it? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think this is the main thing, but also, for instance, there are institutions that offer discounts at facilities that provide elderly care, right? So that's another important aspect of this burden that I think women tend to carry more than men. I think that's probably the main. There are other strategies that have been, I think, in our institution that have been put in place, like helping women to network and find mentors in the female researcher community. I think that's very, very important. And making opportunities for younger investigators really to get to know women, doing research and succeeding in research early on in their careers. I think those are important opportunities, I guess, that institutions can work on having for their researchers that helps with the challenges.
Sure. And Dr. Koltsova, what did you want to add to that as far as what you see as perhaps the biggest challenge that women in research face today?
Nothing unique, probably. I completely echo what Ghislaine just mentioned. So I think it's absolutely important to have a support from the institution with available, especially for younger women who start in their career, available and subsidized daycare, because this provides a lot of possibility to develop as a researcher and as a leader. And so I think I completely agree with what Ghislaine said. So this is possible to resolve, but also I think this is a problem for all of us, not only for women, is a very low federal rate to support research, because 11% funding rate for NCI. It means that only 1 out of 10 Meritus grants can get funded, and this is absolutely low. And this is true not only for the female researchers, but also for everyone. And this, I think, create a lot of problems, including effect of the life-work balance and like possibility to actually do exciting research, which could lead like from the development, from the discoveries, like to the bench side, going to bureaucracy and applying like nonstop for this grants application. And this would be also great to address somehow.
What advice do you give to the young women, and actually you said all young researchers really kind of need a boost, but what advice do you give them as they look to come into the field? And Dr. Koltsova, why don't you continue on? You had started to address that.
Sure. So I think it's very important not to be afraid, to study something new, first of all, and pretty much follow your dream with this. I also think it's very important to choose mentors wisely, because these people who can help to build your career and who can help to build a network for you. But also, I think especially for younger generation, I would suggest to not expect to see the results right away, and trying to see the bigger picture and kind of broader picture, rather than right now benefit of whatever you're doing. But I think it's all possible. It's just like, you have to be open-minded and, be ready.
Dr. Murphy.
Yeah, I completely second that. I think it's all great points. So I keep coming back to resilience. I think resilience is so important in a research career, specifically a cancer research career. There are so many times when experiments don't go as planned, when your proposal doesn't turn out. You thought one way would be right, and you just completely pivot because you find the results show different results. And so having the ability to be bendable and flexible is very important, and not get discouraged when maybe there's a failed experiment. You really have to be able to move forward, acknowledge the challenges, acknowledge those thoughts of doubts, but move forward anyway, and believe in yourself and believe that you can really achieve a career in scientific research. And again, I think, the most important thing, I think, is identify great mentors. As others have said here, mentors will help encourage you your whole way through your career, and nourish those relationships. Don't just forget about them. So I have, mentors from my high school chemistry teacher that I still stay in contact with today, to my PhD and postdoc advisors that I consider dear friends, and then my faculty colleagues here at UCLA. And they've all played a key role in my career. So I just would encourage all young women to establish great mentors from an early age, create that support system of mentorship, because that's going to open doors and opportunities for you along the way, and really nourish those relationships so that system flourishes.
And I'm sure you're at the point now where you have your own mentees and you're shepherding them along. Dr. Martins, I could see you nodding during that. Can you talk a little bit about your mentors and mentoring others?
Sure. I actually agree with what my colleagues just said. I think those are all very important points. One thing I try to pass along to my mentees is, and I think this is true for men and women, but especially women, because it will take more effort sometimes, as we all know. But I think it's very important to find an area that you are really passionate about. As Katja said, that, myself too, since an early age, I was fascinated by how the immune response works. And I think it's important to make sure you are asking important questions in that area, and never be afraid, as was mentioned earlier, to take the route less traveled. If you need to develop a new technology to answer the question that you're trying to answer, if it is an important question, just do it, because this is how we move the field forward. And I would also say, and I think Jennifer mentioned that, don't underestimate yourself, and aim high, and choose to be around people and colleagues who can intellectually challenge you, but also support you. The importance of the mentors that both Jennifer and Katja mentioned. And I would say, be persistent, resilient. Try to build resilience as early as you can, because you're gonna need it, but also be focused, right? And don't forget to enjoy life, while doing all that, because
when you can find the time for it, right?
Right, because science, it can be an amazing journey. It can be hard, but it's truly amazing. So I don't want women to be discouraged from doing science because we kept talking about the difficulties and the challenges. It truly is an amazing journey.
Well, we have a question from our audience now, and this is from Angelica Cardenas, who has her PhD, asking, how can early career researchers connect with women leaders in cancer research?
I guess I'll go for that. So I think there are many opportunities. If you're doing, if you're working on a lab, you can go to meetings, conferences, and present your work. Always have a poster, if you can, when you go to a conference. This is the best way to start conversation, and with other investigators. And there's certainly going to be women investigators who are going to stop by your poster and try to learn from it. And that's a way. I think talk to your mentors, if and they're depending on the stage of your career your institution will encourage you to have sort of informal mentors and their programs for that. If you're very, very early on, there are institutions that have programs like Cedar Sinai where you can volunteer. There are summer programs where you can go into labs and learn about research. And I'm sure other institutions around us have similar programs. I think there are many opportunities. You just really need to ask around, and I think more often than we know, women doing research, they will find the time, in addition to everything else, to mentor and to at least talk to new investigators. So I think there are many opportunities. Those are just a few that come to mind right now.
Yeah, great advice. And do either Dr. Murphy or Dr. Koltsova have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I would just say I definitely agree with that. I think going to conferences and scientific meetings is probably the best way, and really start networking and network. It's the earlier you start, the better, and practice your skills. I know when you're young and you're starting, it can be a little intimidating to go up to a speaker that you don't know and introduce yourself and try to start talking, but those skills will get better with time. So the earlier you start, the better and easier that will be. But specifically, within the society that I belong to as a molecular imaging scientist, which is the WMIS, there's a women interest group, and it's specifically for women in molecular imaging. And so, for me, when I started out, I kind of would seek out that group and became a member of it. And that's how I really engaged in a network of women within my field. I met so many people, and ended up being the chair of the group last year. So I chaired the group, and it was a society that it kept me involved. I was able to talk to other women in my field, and we planned different activities specifically for women to, again, address the sort of same issues we're talking about now. How women can excel in their career and the types of support that they need. And all these different events that we would plan every year at the annual meeting. And so that's an example of how you can get more involved within a greater society. Look for those smaller women, fused interest groups, because they do exist and they're very helpful.
Well, that's terrific advice. And I can see Kelsey has popped back up here. Thank you all for your insights today. It really wonderful to hear about your work, continued success with that. And just want to remind our audience, obviously, as you heard, the future is bright, but we certainly need your support to keep the pipeline of female-led cancer research projects full. And so right now, I do want to turn it back over to Kelsey Davis to share more with you about the ResearchHERS campaign and how you can get involved.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you to our amazing researchers from Cedar, Sinai, and UCLA. As we all know, cancer research doesn't begin and end in the lab or over a set of data. It's all focused on helping people avoid or survive cancer. Your support through fundraising can make all the difference. The next great cancer discovery could be sitting on a shelf as a grant application right now. During the past few years, we've seen hundreds of women who have signed on as ambassadors from various industries, including business, biotech, academia, the medical and healthcare field, and even high school students. Currently, our 2022 Los Angeles campaign is represented by a diverse group of strong female leaders, but we are just getting started. We're looking for more ambassadors who are passionate about women-led cancer research to join the movement, to raise awareness and critical funds to support the next big cancer breakthrough in cancer research. Even American Cancer Society's CEO, Dr. Karen Knudsen, has joined in the fight and is serving as an ambassador for our national ResearchHERS campaign. At this time, I would like to share a short video message from our CEO, Dr. Karen Knudsen.
Hello, I'm Dr. Karen Knudsen, CEO of the American Cancer Society. As the American Cancer Society 2022 National ResearchHERS Ambassador, I'd like to thank you for joining me in this important program. As a female in oncology research myself, I have a special passion for ResearchHERS. ACS is proud to be a top supporter of women in cancer research. Of those who disclose gender, about half of ACS grantees are women, most of them early in their careers. 100% of the donations raised through the ResearchHERS campaign are dedicated to help support and sustain our portfolio of ACS-funded grants led by women. As of January of this year, there are 237 women-led research projects totaling more than $141 million. These projects were eligible to receive funding raised through the ResearchHERS program last year. All the proceeds, 100%, raised from the campaign support the direct costs of 3 important ACS initiatives. First, funding women-led cancer research grants. Second, supporting paid parental leave for postdoctoral fellows in cancer research to help alleviate the challenges of remaining in the workforce while expanding their families. Finally, funding of the Summer Health Research Experience, SHE in Oncology, a 2-week virtual program that introduces high school juniors or seniors who identify as female to a wide range of cancer-related career experiences. In May of this year, ResearchHERS campaigns will kick off in more than 20 communities nationwide with a goal of raising more than $1.6 million. Women make invaluable contributions to cancer research, yet we know are underrepresented in research leadership. As the leading nonprofit funder of cancer research in this country, we can help sustain women-led cancer research, launch new careers, and inspire an entirely new generation of young women in considering careers in science. So thank you for joining me as a ResearchHERS ambassador.
Thank you. I love that message from our CEO, Dr. Karen Knudsen. I would also like to recognize our current ambassadors, Charlotte Elise, Diana Jamal, Navarre Meridian, Caitlin Carmichael, and Pilot Paisley Rose. They are all leaders in their communities who share our passion to fuel the future of cancer research. We have a strong team, but we're looking for more to join us in the fight against cancer. If you or someone you know is interested in becoming a ResearchHERS ambassador, please visit our website at acsresearchers.org/Los Angeles. I will put the link in the chat. Visit our website, or you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen for all the information and to make a donation. Please show your support by making a donation of any size to the ResearchHERS campaign. All dollars raised will go to fund women-led cancer research. With your help, we can sustain support of the best and brightest cancer research led by women. Thank you.
Kelsey, that's terrific. Nice to hear how the ambassadors are impacting this. And it's so great to have this virtual speaker series as a way to feature researchers and really raise awareness about the importance of supporting women in cancer research. Of course, many more of these events are planned, so I'd like to bring back the 2022 ResearchHERS Campaign Chair, Dr. Medina Kawe. Please tell us more about what's in store for the rest of the year.
Sure, Carolyn, and thank you so much. And thank you especially to our amazing panelists, Katya, Ghislaine, Jennifer, who are also my good colleagues. So great to hear your wisdom and experiences. Thank you for doing this. We're really excited to be hosting an additional speaker series session like this in September. So stay tuned for that exact date and time, which will be announced soon. And similar to today, the September event will feature speakers from Cedar Sinai, other ACS-funded researchers, campaign ambassadors. And so we hope you can join us again as we continue the conversation in September. We also have tentative plans for an in-person event in the Los Angeles area toward the end of, so heads up for that. I'm excited to see you all again in September. And I want to extend a huge thank you to Carolyn Johnson from NBC4 for doing such a phenomenal job, as always, as our moderator today. Carolyn, thank you so much for being with us today. And I am now invited to close us out.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And I'm excited to hear this might actually be in person again sometime soon. You know, we've all gotten so used to these Zoom events, and I think it's been amazing what we can learn from each other through these kind of panels, but it's also really nice to see each other in person. I want to give a big thank you to the presenting sponsor of the 2022 American Cancer Society ResearchHERS of Los Angeles campaign, Cedar Sinai. And thank you also again to our panelists and researchers, Dr. Koltsova, Dr. Martins, and Dr. Murphy. And a big thank you as well to Dr. Medina Kawe for serving as the 2022 ResearchHERS Chair and supporting the campaign. Of course, a big thank you to you and our audience for joining us today. Don't forget, if you're interested in learning more about ResearchHERS or you want to get involved, be sure to reach out to your local American Cancer Society staff partners who will also be emailing you after this event. So I hope you have a great day, everyone. And if you have time, I hope you'll join me tonight at 4 and 6 p.m. on Channel 4.